How do you regulate a smell? It sounds like a trick question, doesn't it? But it's a very real-world problem that scientists and governments are trying to solve right now. In this explainer, we're going to break down exactly how they do it.
We have all been there. That weird, unpleasant scent just drifts through your window from who knows where. A nearby factory, maybe a farm, and it just totally ruins your day. And you think to yourself, this should be illegal. But how would that even work?
Well, it turns out you are not alone in asking that question. This is a global issue. Seriously. From Canada to Colombia, all across Europe and down to Australia, governments are grappling with this exact problem. How to turn your complaint about a bad smell into an actual enforceable environmental policy.
The real challenge, the fundamental problem, is this. Smell is a personal, subjective experience. But to regulate it, you have to somehow make it objective. You got to turn it into a measurable pollutant, just like sulfur dioxide or any other chemical.
So where do you even start? Well, the very first step is to break down what actually makes a smell a nuisance. See, it's not just that it smells bad. It's about how that smell really impacts people's lives.
To do this scientifically, experts use a special framework. It's known as the FIDOL factors. It's a pretty clever acronym that helps them quantify all the different parts of a bad smell episode.
For example, think about it. A quick whiff of something unpleasant is completely different from being stuck with that smell constantly, right? That how often part, that's a huge piece of the puzzle.
And this framework breaks it all down. So F is for frequency. How often are you smelling it? I is for intensity. Just how strong is it? D is for duration. Are we talking a few seconds or does it hang in the air for hours? O is for offensiveness. Is it the nice smell of a bakery or the really unpleasant smell of, say, a rendering plant? And last, L is for location. A smell in an industrial park is one thing, but that same exact smell next to a hospital or a school, that's a whole different story. All 5 of these factors have to be considered.
Okay, so we have a framework. That makes sense. But how do you actually get a number for something like intensity or offensiveness? This is where it gets really interesting. Scientists have developed a standardized way to measure smell.
It's called dynamic olfactometry, and here's how it works. You literally take a sample of the stinky air in a special bag. In a lab, you start diluting it with clean, totally neutral air. You keep diluting it and have a panel of people smell it, until exactly half of them can no longer detect the odor at all. That dilution factor, that becomes its official concentration.
And no, this isn't just guesswork. The official sensor is the human nose. But these aren't just random people. The panelists are carefully screened to make sure they have a totally average sense of smell. The results get expressed in European odor units, and the whole process is calibrated against a standard chemical, N-butanol, just to make sure that a lab in Germany and a lab in Chile can get comparable results. It's a surprisingly rigorous science.
So, we can measure odor. Problem solved, right? Well, not quite. There's a huge catch that makes this whole thing incredibly tricky.
Which brings us to the core question, right? If the science is so solid, why do people living near a smelly facility still feel like the regulations aren't protecting them?
And the answer is right here in these graphs. Just look at the top one. It shows an air sample averaged over a full hour. The concentration looks low. It looks flat, way below any legal limit. But here's the thing. Our noses don't experience an hourly average. We experience theirs second by second. Now look at the bottom graph. That's the reality of that same hour. A series of short, intense spikes of odor. Those peaks are what really annoy us, and they are completely invisible in that long-term average.
So, to solve this problem, regulators use something called the peak-to-mean ratio. It's basically a mathematical adjustment they apply to the hourly average to estimate how intense those short-term peaks probably were. This lets their models get a lot closer to what people in the community are actually experiencing.
So, with the FIDOL factors in this peak-to-mean ratio in their toolkit, how are different countries actually putting this science into practice? Let's take a quick look around the world.
It's pretty clear there is no single answer. The UK, for example, sets a very strict limit for highly offensive odors, just 1.5 odor units, and that level can't be exceeded more than 2% of the time. Colombia uses a similar idea, but with a higher threshold of 3 odor units. Germany, on the other hand, has a totally different system based on odor hours, which tracks the percentage of time in a whole year that a smell is likely to be noticeable. Every country is tailoring the science to fit its own laws and public expectations.
So the main point here is that even though the methods are different, the objective is universal. Find a fair and scientific way to protect citizens from major odor pollution.
Given all this complexity, what does the research say is the most effective way to manage and regulate these smells? Well, it turns out you need more than just one tool in the toolbox.
The best practice is what's called an integrated strategy. Yeah, it starts with setting those odor limits we've been talking about, but it also includes common sense rules like minimum buffer zones between a facility and people's homes. It means limiting how much odor can be pumped out at the source, not just what's smelled miles away. And crucially, it means actually listening to community complaints. And finally, it requires industries to use the best possible technology to stop the smells from happening in the first place.
This quote really gets to the heart of the whole thing. When you have clear, objective rules, industries can plan and invest in preventing pollution from the get-go, instead of just reacting to complaints after the damage is done. It completely changes the dynamic.
And all of this leaves us with a really big question. Regulating a smell isn't just a technical challenge, it's a societal one. It forces us to ask how we balance our right to a clean, pleasant environment with all the industrial and agricultural stuff that our communities often depend on. There are no easy answers, for sure. But understanding the science, that's the first step toward finding that balance.